Everyone can hear me? Sweet, the mics are working. I know it's the after lunch session, and so everyone's gonna be a little sleepy, and so we're trying to get the hype up a little bit. We're gonna make this a little bit more interactive. So get ready for an awesome session. We have a great panel. My name is Rohit. I'm a member of the Foundation Model Training and Inference team at AWS. We build and serve foundation models for Amazon and our customers as well. So very excited to be here. I'll let the panel introduce themselves and go ahead.
Hey, I'm Dara. I'm CTO at Intercom. We build Fin, which is the #1 AI agent for customer service.
Hey, I'm Ari. We build vertical software for consumer lenders in the US.
Hey guys, my name's Aaron. I'm the GTM lead at Cartesia. We build state space voice AI models and help folks build voice agents.
Fantastic. So here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to ask just about 3 or 4 questions to the panel, just for you all to get to know them and get to know what we're talking about today. And then we're going to make the rest of the session Q&A. And so I would start thinking about some questions. Make sure you get an opportunity to speak. It'll be a good time. So first question, and we'll dive right into it. Something that we hear a lot from our customers, especially here at Amazon, is when should they make a decision between buying or building artificial intelligence, and especially in vertical SaaS as well. So if you want to take it away and start thinking about that.
Yeah, we see this a fair bit too. I think the first question is like, what is it you're trying to do? What is it you're trying to achieve? And then like one way I help people try to work through this is like, what are you actually comparing? You're comparing an off-the-shelf solution. Hopefully it's, depending what you're trying to solve, it might exist, it might not. So, but assuming it exists, I think you need to like make a business case for like what impact that would have. Will it be better for your business? And then on the buy side, figure out like, have you got some unique edge that you think you can achieve a better outcome? And the trap I see a lot of people fall into is like skip that step and just naively assume that it's going to be cheaper for them to build. And the problem they fall into then is they've never actually established kind of like a success criteria. So they'll convince themselves they've taken the right path, but without actually understanding whether that's true or not. So I don't know, I'll try to wrap this up with a simple example. Like Fin, resolves customer support queries. We charge about $1 for each one of those. You can certainly take a foundational model and build a version of Fin for a lot less than $1. But the bar you have to meet in order for that to be a good decision is about as good as Fin, and that's very hard. So most people fall into that trap of thinking it's cheaper, but then they spend more money because they don't get even nearly as good an outcome.
Yeah, I think it's like, we just view it as when we pitch to our like enterprise customers, or like bulge bracket banks or like regional credit unions or something. It's like, what's your core competency? Like your job is to underwrite risk for Americans. And yeah, in theory, you could try to build an AI-enabled insurance filing software that we could sell you, for $1 million a year. But the time it'll take you to do that will be extraordinarily high, and the talent isn't often there. And so I think the cool thing about building vertical AI in the build versus buy world is, one, the talent that these like companies will have, depending on your vertical, at least in ours, is like not very high. And so we often just call their bluff, and it's like, yeah, like if you think you can build this, like go for it, and we'll check back in 6 months. And we have never lost a sale. Like whenever we do that playbook, they come back in 6 months. And so I think like if you're building in the space, just be confident. Like a lot of these guys can do what you're doing. They are not in the weeds like you are, and they've just been given a directive like quote unquote use AI. And if you're like really embedded into their workflows and have a custom built solution for them, they will often not meet your quality bar.
Yeah, to echo that, I think thinking about your core competency is super important. And maybe do a Venn diagram with like what's super strategic for you and where you think you want to create additional value. And are you willing to invest time and energy into going and building that in-house? And I think, to your point, a lot of the teams want to build it in-house, right? Engineers want to build. They see all of these different tweets and blog posts about the new tech here, vibe code this, vibe code that, and they want to just get their hands dirty, right? And so we try and support customers into sort of two buckets. The folks who do want to build, we build a platform that makes it super easy for them to go and build in-house, all the developer first features, these types of things, and really support their journey. And then depending on the profile, they also may want something that's a little bit more fully managed, right? The forward deployed engineer is probably one of the hottest job titles in the market right now, and that's frankly because voice agents and agents in general often can't meet that last mile, right? Like if you buy something out of the box and you want to configure it for your use case, there's that last mile where you need this little extra customization, this little extra integration, and that's preventing your team from being able to meet that quality bar that your customers expect. So yeah, just kind of think about where you want to sit, what is strategic to your business, and then figure out if you should customize something off the shelf or work with someone who's willing to support your journey.
Yeah. So thank you for that. Before we move forward, could we just get a raise of hands of those who are at a startup or building a startup? Awesome. And going into the next question, especially for those who are at startups and building vertical SaaS startups, we always hear as from executives especially, how can a company track and understand the ROI in their Gen AI investments?
I think it'll come back to similar thing, which is what are you trying to achieve and are you getting what you hoped for? Again, for customer service, the outcome you want is high quality support delivered instantly, and that's pretty easy to track. You have a rate of automation, and you're chasing 99-100%, and your investment in AI there should be achieving that goal, and it should be doing so at a lower cost than what you pay humans. So they're the kind of simple terms. I think too many people will approach AI projects without even asking the question, what does good look like? What are we actually chasing? So I just removed the word AI, and any investment is going to be framed in that way. What are we trying to achieve, and how do we know if we've got it?
Yeah, I think there's just very lovely, warm and fuzzy way that Gen AI projects are pitched, which is it'll increase efficiency. But what does that really mean to your customers? They want to save crap tons of money. And there's only two ways to do that. Either you greatly reduce headcount for them, or you are driving a huge spike in their revenue. At least what we've seen is that the OpEx efficiency is almost trivial. Majority of jobs that are being done in vertical specific industries are a state machine that needs a set number of parameters and can probably be automated with LLMs. And so, when it comes to measuring ROI, what we do in a lot of our contracts is we just say, hey, what is the human metric of efficiency? I.e., how many humans does it take to process a loan? How many humans does it take to file an insurance claim? How long do they take? And thus, if I do my solution at scale, you will need X number of less humans. And so, at the banks that we work with, they actively track headcount. And our most successful projects are ones that they have reduced headcount by 30 to 40%. And then we get super sticky, because then they let you start going downstream to other parts of their business. But I think it's a super, super important thing, because especially if you're in vertical AI, you want to land and expand and hit these other use cases. And they're only going to let you do that if you either save them dollars or give them more dollars. And so really, really define that up front and make them act on it when your product works.
Yeah, agreed. It's the more specific you can be, the better. Something we try and do when we're first starting an engagement with a customer is actually do a little bit of that consultative sale and dive into what metrics they're already tracking. They probably have a dashboard that they're working against. We love to ground ourselves in what that existing framework is for measuring things, and then work backwards from that. I think the way to measure efficiency will vary quite a bit based on the vertical, especially given that we're at a vertical AI company, right? Like there's some very specific niches in here that you guys are all hyper plugged into, and you know this market better than anyone else. So like being able to like pitch that and articulate that in very clear terms for that vertical is important. Whether it's like loan servicing or things like this, right? Like pitch that very clearly, and I think you'll resonate with your customer.
One form of ROI that I think is interesting is when companies are actually able to implement artificial intelligence within their own organizations and get some sort of efficiency gain or productivity gain. Can you talk a little bit about the ways that your organizations have implemented AI internally, and then if there is maybe some advice or guidance you can give to the audience about what makes those implementations successful?
Yep. So within our engineering organization, like we all share this kind of belief in the promise. That's the first place people fall down on. If you're skeptical, then you'll blind yourself or like turn yourself away from even chasing. So we have this sense of belief that there's like a lot of promise here, and approach it with like a really open mind and a sense of curiosity. So our engineering team, I think the most important thing was encourage that open mind, encourage learning, encourage sharing, and make it possible for people to use whatever tools they want. And we're chasing, we believe, the ROI we're chasing is we believe we can like double our productivity in an engineering org. And the reality is we haven't done that yet. And that's not failure, it's just there's a long road. So I don't know, my takeaway might be that like we're very early in this, unless you're talking about very discrete bits of work that you can entirely hand off to AI in terms of being more productive as a team, we're very early. And I think the one bit of guidance would be think about what it should look like in 12 months or 18 months and chase that rather than get frustrated and bogged down in what you're actually able to do today.
Yeah, I think it's like kind of a sick time to be building a company, because like anything that would normally take like, someone with 2 years of experience out of college that you would hire to do, like scrubbing your CRM or, writing front-end code or being your QA, is like now on the table to be automated. So you can do so much more with like so much like less dollars spent. And so like, I think like a common trap that we really fell into as like a startup was we were super efficient when we were a seed company. And like every single dollar that we spent was like hyper attributed to like an exact goal that we wanted. And so we were super aggressive on being like, no, we're not going to hire for this role because it's like not super important. Can we buy a tool to do QA? Can we buy a tool to do sales outreach? Can we buy a tool to do anything like almost trivial? And the natural inclination, like once we raised our Series A, was like, hey, now let's just hire someone to do this. And I think that was the biggest mistake we've done over the past 6 months is not realize that, hey, the tools we bought 6 months ago are like exponentially better than when we first onboarded them. And I think like your job as like, founders or, employees at like early stage companies is kind of push the envelope on that. Like a lot of stuff in like building a company is like hyper boring nonsense that could be completely automated. And it's kind of your job just to be like, hey, I can do this with an $80,000 a year person or like a $2,000 a month software. And I think you can do a lot with a $2,000 a month software nowadays.
Yeah, agreed. I think the proliferation of software is just continuing for all these different niches, right? Like the cost of software is going down. I don't think it's going to go to zero, but it's going down. And so adopting these new tools is really fun. Being a foundation model research company, of course, we're adopting AI across the board internally. I think there are probably 3 main buckets I would put our AI adoption into. One is productivity, right? All of the different like note takers, like summarization tools, these types of things. Another one is code gen, right? We talked about that with engineering over there, and then finally like GTM. So for the first two, the productivity gains of these like better note taking tools, Granola, things like this, they're helpful. I don't have to write up an email or write up a summary after a call. It's not really going to change the fundamental trajectory of a company, in my opinion. But it's still like super helpful. It's a nice to have. The coding feels to me still a little early. For more advanced use cases beyond like demos, it's great for spinning up demos as a PM. You want to like ship a V0 really quickly. That's awesome. But for more advanced use cases, it still requires a lot of engineering to make sure it works well. But the piece I'm most excited about is on the go-to-market front. There are so many tools out there that my team is like eagerly awaiting to try. I think Clay is speaking over there, and I think Apollo, all of these types of tools, right? Like the ability to like build a lot of leverage on outbound and inbound like sort of sales conversations is something I'm super excited about. I'm weary of all of the like automated AI though that's in my inbox, and it's they all follow the same sort of like pattern, right? So I think once people start to figure that out and do better ways of targeting, I think it'll be great. But I'm excited about the GTM aspects of it.
Great. So we're going to open it up to audience questions. If there's no audience questions, I got a ton more questions I can ask them. But if you can raise your hand, and then when you ask the question, I will repeat your question out loud.
Awesome. I think it was either Aaron or Ari. Someone said that AI can't deliver that last mile, and the customization there is so important. Couldn't agree more. How long, like when do flags start going up when that last mile is getting too long, customizations are getting too deep, where you start to say, this isn't a product, this doesn't scale?
It's hard to say. I would look at some metric that's like specific to that use case and figure out like is there a drop-off point at this point or something to that effect. How valuable is that drop-off point, and try and be quantitative about it if possible. Fundamentally, that's why we built sort of a code-first approach. We think that in today's era, like more code should be written as opposed to less with these like no-code tools, especially for agents. And so we're all about trying to enable that last mile and empower your team to ship it. Yeah.
Got a question? Am I projecting? Awesome. Dara, am I pronouncing your name right?
Yeah, you got it.
Awesome. You guys were pretty early on with Thin, so I'm wondering, like, you're a few years into this. Like, what have been some really big surprises along the way? And I'm also wondering, how do you guys manage hallucinations?
Do you have something more on the like what have been surprised along the way? Like what are you getting at there?
No, not anything more specific.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Where do I start? Well, I'll start with the second part. Hallucinations. Like that was the number one. When we saw like ChatGPT or early version GPT API, that was our number one concern. Like, and any time where we just tried it ourselves, it was like, oh, this feels too frequent that it would make stuff up. And that turned into like our primary kind of engineering objective in the early days is, can we use this power of this model, but harness in a way where we're comfortable with the rate of hallucination? So we kind of got good at trying to measure and use models to critique, is this answer made up of only these inputs, or is there stuff that's made up? So, without getting more detail, it actually was one of our first challenges that we worked hard on, and subsequent models have been a lot better out of the box, but that's a core metric of quality that we really care about and have a lot of like test cases and whatnot to figure out if we're comfortable with the balance. And very hard to get zero hallucinations, and there's a really gray area where in our product where actually a lot of the hallucinations are kind of a result of conflicting information. It's like, hey, you've given me multiple inputs that conflict, and when you can identify that and debug it, you fix the issue. In terms of surprise along the way, it's been really, really wild. Like, I think one of the interesting things for me is just how the buyer, the buyer in the market, like I don't want to like be condescending, but our job as selling a thing is realizing that buyers don't know what they're buying, right? Like, so there's this job of how do you like pitch your product against a competitor. Like, from the surface area, the products are identical, and a lot of AI products are like a very small surface area, like the top of an iceberg, and then this monster of like complexity underneath. You know, just seeing how people are making like not necessarily data-backed or logical decisions on things, and seeing how much we needed to try to help educate them on making a decision. And I loved Ari's example of like just having that confidence of like, hey, you know, if you think you can build yourself, by all means go for it and come back. Or look, I'm not going to win. I'm no interest in trying to win this deal by like talking to you about it. Why don't you just try it and compare it to all the others by all means, and pick the best one on them. You know, use that process to identify what you care about and pick the best one. So that kind of just new territory about how people evaluate your products and how you can help them. If you can get good at helping them, then it's much easier for them to buy your product, because most people are kind of lost at what they're buying. They're just chasing the kind of promise or mandate of using AI.
Hi. So I have a question for you, Aaron. Can you talk about the craziest thing that you have tried with AI on the go-to-market side, and then also talk about your most ambitious experiment that has failed miserably?
Truth be told, a lot of that is managed by a different team, so it makes it easy for me to bow out. I mean, we were going to a conference, right? CCW over the summer in Las Vegas, and the data that comes in is pretty messy about like the leads, right? And who's coming and whatnot. So we just tried this crazy like fuzzy matching in Apollo using like title and name, and like looking up, because all we had was a title and name, no email. And we did this like crazy like fuzzy matching with some like confidence interval about like, is this the same person or not? And we had a decent hit rate. I think it was like, I don't know the numbers specifically, like low tens in terms of like reply rates, right? But I think there were probably some like angry folks around like spamming and things like this, right? So taking a step back, that's why I'm hesitant around some of these products as well. But yeah, just somewhat matching of names and entity resolution, I think, is probably the hardest problem.
Hi, I guess this is for Aaron. Can you talk about some of the go-to-market use cases that you think are most viable and valuable?
A lot of folks are trying outbound dialing, like outbound SDR, right? I think that can be a little tricky with like TCPA and some other like regulations kind of protecting spam calls and things. So where we've actually seen better adoption is like follow-ups with existing customers, trying to do like upsell, especially for like SMB or like long tail use cases, right? Like where someone's already in your network, maybe they just visited, you know, your nail salon or your, you know, car repair, and doing follow-ups and trying to upsell and things like that, getting feedback on new products, really automating kind of more the UXR customer success pieces, I think are super exciting for me because they're a little less spammy and more like value add to your existing base. And like, as we all know, NDR is almost more important than like sort of revenue velocity. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. One of the things that is very exciting about AI is the promise that it can be funded from the labor budget. May this continue to infinity, amen. I don't know everyone's product here, but dare I know yours, we're happy users of Fin. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about it is one of the first AI products certainly that our company uses, which is paid by us per unit of work, which is like maybe the first foot in the door of being funded from labor. I wonder if you can share any of the trials and tribulations in figuring out how to get the price set correctly. Has there been pushback, and to what extent do you feel that that has been effective, or is there room to work? And in particular, because it's per unit of work, it can be difficult to budget. Not that this is a complaint from Cubby, who is a happy user of Fin, but for some companies that could be a concern. Just interested in your perspective on one of the first products that is paid per unit of work, nominally eating into the labor budget. Easy, hard, how's it been?
It took a lot of before we launched Fin and pricing for Fin, there was a lot of like internal disagreeing about how we should price it, and a lot of discomfort about trying some newer models. So like I'll just say that for starters, this was not like an obviously everyone thought this was a good idea thing to do. But what we were chasing, like you point out, was this labor budget, and this belief that AI can and should deliver for certain types of work, and customer service is a great example, be able to do that job, not today, but like as good and then better than humans. So when we started, like the numbers weren't like, hey, all the jobs are going, but we were, taking a quarter of the work, and now it's nearly 3/4 of the work. And anyway, so that's the background context. I think you were you maybe getting at like price point, or was it more just generally the model?
The question is really,
Yeah.
it creates a variable cost.
Yeah.
Whether intercom products tend to be more fixed price for fixed service.
Yeah. So one of the challenges is often the buyer, like a support leader, will think about this differently than the CFO. And when you get talking to the CFO and you can line up the numbers of like, hey, this is from your proof of concept, this is what happened. You've shared transparently that it costs you X dollars per human handled one, etc. That works out a pretty straightforward thing. Some of the challenges are the variable model though, or like it's not instantaneous, or there's a leap of faith. Like if I buy this product and turn it all the way up, then my need for human work will disappear. But maybe I'm a little bit cautious and I'll do that in small steps, and I can't stop spending money on salaries straight away. That's like a deferred saving. So there's all these challenges. And then the variable cost model is challenging in terms of predictability. You don't know how well the product will perform until you use it, so you don't know how much you need to budget. So there's a lot of challenges with it. I still think it's been the right thing for us to do. And for most people, most customers, once they kind of get it and figure out how to think about it or how to talk about it in their own company, it makes sense. The bit that's kind of interesting that like going after the labor budget's good, but it sort of distracts from also what a lot of our customers have talked about. Like there's benefits beyond cost, like and this applies to I suspect any application of AI here. A huge benefit is the like instantaneous nature of it. Like humans are expensive, but also in most jobs, like they can't instantly context switch and do a bunch of stuff in parallel or whatever. So you have a lot of wait times, or quality is variable, etc. So with Fin, what we've seen, or what we believe and pitch, is the idea that the cost saving is one thing, but the like benefits of better service have other secondary benefits beyond cost, like so. Getting someone the help they need at the right time when they actually want to use your product, and you unblock them, retains or converts better. So there's also that extra dimension of like, I think if everything's about costs, if it feels like a race to the bottom at times as well, and like you're not talking about the value or quality and explaining why that's good. So I don't know, to wrap it up, I think the model we're happy with, but it's not without many challenges that I don't have good answers to yet. I think that's what you're kind of poking at, really.
Do your customers enjoy this type of pricing model, or do they prefer other types of pricing models?
Well, like we had an AI product before, Finn, like on previous generation of like technology, and we priced it as a per seat add-on, like $50 per seat. And our kind of sales team would say, hey, that did really well. You know, they managed to attach that to a whole bunch of people, clocked up a lot of revenue. But when I looked at the numbers, what I felt like, you know, really uncomfortable with was a lot of that was, you know, booked revenue that had no usage behind it. And then for the usage that did exist, there was like multiple orders of magnitude on like what people were paying based on kind of the shape of their business and how lucky they were with the setup. Like it was a harder to set up product. So, you know, and if there's that much spread on the kind of effective price, like you're nowhere near like actually the kind of right point of price. Some people are getting a steal and some people are paying way more than they should, and it just doesn't feel good, coupled with the unused revenue. So I would like fight anyone who tried to like push that type of model on me or on our customers. It just didn't work. However, within the variable model, like something that we realize we need to do a lot is help people with this predictability thing. So, you know, one example of what we will do will be, we will, you know, we have a lot of belief in our product. We will find, understand our business, and maybe through a proof of concept or whatever, find like a threshold that we think, you know, this would be game changing for your business, right? Like if we can deliver this, this will be good. And we'll price on that. And then if we believe we can do better, and if we overachieve, we will perhaps allow that as a, you know, zero charge overage, but with the expectation that, you know, if it outperforms that at renewal, that will kind of establish the right price point. So that kind of helps sidestep some of the predictability part. Like you never want to have to go back to your CFO multiple times for like, hey, I need more money. So we help in that way, and there's other ways that have helped as well.
I believe we have time for one more question in the back.
My question is more for Ari. In order to reduce the time from loan origination till funding, when you are not an ODFI, neither you are at the receiving end, you are just an enabler. What are the AI levers, or what are the, let's say, learnings from SBA programs, PPP programs? How would you advise there? Like, how would that acceleration in friction be reduced?
Yeah, I think the delay in time on funding comes from just two things, which is like, hey, indirect lending results in disparate parties being responsible for information. So for an auto loan, it's a dealership that's to provide the STIPs. Where AI comes really useful in that is like the moment something is like broken in the funnel, rather than waiting for a human to check in and be like, oh, like, why is this guy's loan not been funded yet? You can programmatically just keep hitting the source of information. And so like, there's a really interesting case study. I think the guys at maybe JP Morgan or Fifth Third, one of them, they essentially utilized Informed IQ with an AI voice agent, and said the moment like anything that is going wrong on this path, it takes more than 30 minutes, call up the resulting party and ask them to unblock the funnel. And the time to funding you'll see has dropped from like, you know, a week to like 2 or 3 days, which is pretty sick. And I think that you can expect the number to go further and further down as each party starts embracing AI. Like if the dealership does, and the consumer does, and the lender does, you're gonna see a time to fund that's pretty much like same day.
So one more question from our side is, put yourselves 1 year ahead from today, I think September 9th, 2026. What are some of the trends, outcomes, what do you want to see happen in the next year in AI?
The thing that comes to mind to me is just like I think so. You know, I saw a heavily retweeted thing about this study of like how most AI projects are like economically a failure. I think that just represents how early things are, and in the next 12 months, I'd love to hear a lot more, you know, really high impact success stories from people, like in whatever application, and I believe that will happen. I believe people are getting more clued in. The tools are improving, the products are improving, and it'll flip from the again, there was some meme of like, what do we want? We want AI, and to do what? And it's like, I don't know. Like that kind of awareness of actually skillful application will I think kick in much more strongly.
Yeah, I hope there's like more regulatory guidance we'll see in the US on how you can use AI. Like especially you start going into like mission critical workflows on healthcare or finance or something where you have people's SSNs and, you know, bank account numbers. It's this huge gray area currently of like what the AI is legally authorized to do on behalf of a borrower or a bank. And hoping in the next year there's like much more concrete guidance in terms of like how authentication is managed through an AI agent versus a consumer.
I'll change my answer to echo that and maybe extend it into like preventing deepfakes and like spoofing and like spam and all this stuff. These are probably the worst culprits of AI, and I think I'd love to see better governance around that. But generally, my first answer was going to be just more bespoke software. I think there's a lot of new like tools out there to help ship individual like businesses and products that were previously sort of underserved by like the larger sort of big tech era, and I think now is the time to kind of ship a bunch of great purpose-built software for different use cases.
Amazing. I think that's all the time we have. Thank you all.
Thank you to the panelists.
Thank you.